It is sometimes said that money makes the world go round. And while it is certainly the grease that facilitates the movement of social, political, military, and market forces, it is also as varied and diverse as the humans and aliens that populate the galaxy.
You are listening to the Star Lores Podcast.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Are you stuck-up, half-witted, scruffy-looking nerf herder?
But I was going into Toshi Station to pick up some power converters.
I got a bad feeling about this.
Currency.
I have 20,000 Republic dactaries.
Republic credits? Republic credits are no good out here. I need something more real.
I don't have anything else, but credits will do fine.
No, they won't.
Credits will do fine.
No, they won't. What, you think you're some kind of Jedi waving your hand around like that? I'm a Toydarian. My tricks don't work on me. Only money. No money, no parts, no deal.
The economy trades in vast quantities of raw resources, manufactured goods, and services at a galactic scale. And this trade, out of convenience, exploitation, or necessity, the transaction of these goods and services is often facilitated by a currency that serves as a medium of exchange. While some planets and galactic civilizations do depend on traditional forms of direct trade, these transactions can be simplified through the use of a recognized and agreed upon currency to help ease those transactions, especially at scale. Currencies can be made up of many things, and not all currencies are recognized across all systems. Some planets and civilizations trade in simple items like shells, while others depend on some form of local or global currency, and more yet depend on a galactic or semi-galactic recognized medium to facilitate interplanetary exchange. Currency, also known as money, served as the primary medium of exchange within specific territories, issued by regional authorities responsible for economic policy. Throughout galactic history, numerous currencies were employed.
The Galactic Credit Standard. The Galactic Credit Standard, commonly known as a credit, or cred, and casually referred to as Republic Dataris in its early days, stood as the galaxy's dominant currency since the era of the Galactic Republic. Over time, it evolved into the Imperial Credit, maintaining its place at the heart of galactic economies. Born on the distant world of Sojourn, it was backed by the boundless natural wealth of Argao, a planet under the stewardship of the formidable Intergalactic Banking Clan, or the IGBC. It had stood as the time-tested currency for thousands of years within the Republic. This ensured its stability and widespread adoption. During the Clone Wars, the IGBC leveraged the credit's influence, extending loans and financial lifelines to both the Republic and the Separatists, a move that solidified its role as the ultimate neutral arbiter of galactic finance. Decades later, the IGBC repeated its deft maneuvering, financing both the fledgling New Republic and the remnant of the Empire. Form and function.
The credit was primarily a form of digital currency, seamlessly integrated into the daily lives of the galaxy's inhabitants. Credits were accessed and traded through slim cards, standardized in size but occasionally featuring distinct patterns or designs to denote their value. As the Galactic Republic reached its zenith, credit chips, compact and efficient, rose in popularity, becoming a favored method for transactions. During the tumultuous years of the Clone Wars, however, physical manifestations of the credit appeared in various forms. Gleaming metallic ingots and curious cubes, presumably similar in function to chips, began circulating among the populace.
Credit chip. Credit chips, often called credit sticks, were a marvel of convenience and innovation in the galaxy's bustling economy. These slim, flat devices function as portable banks, issued by planetary governments, with values ranging from a modest single credit to astronomical sums exceeding $1 billion. The precise limits depended on the authority issuing them. Funds flowed seamlessly to and from these chips by linking directly to central bank accounts, eliminating the need for cumbersome hard currency. This technology, prevalent across the core and colony worlds, became the backbone of interstellar commerce. While many outer rim planets still clung to physical currency, the ubiquity of credit chips ensured that few galactic citizens ever handled cash. Most income and transactions existed entirely within the digital sphere. The Republic, the Empire, and the corporate sector authority alike relied on this technology to sustain their vast economic networks. By the time of 32 BBY, credit chip technology had been refined over centuries to provide unparalleled ease of use while prioritizing security. Originally developed to facilitate instant access to funds and deter theft, the chips were equipped with cutting-edge safeguards. Each credit chip featured advanced security codeouts and intricate credit algorithm memory stripes woven into its circuitry. While modifying a credit chip was theoretically possible, it was an arduous and perilous endeavor. Any attempt to reprogram a chip to access unauthorized accounts risked triggering its self-destruct mechanism, a failsafe designed to vaporize the chip and render tampering attempts futile. This blend of practicality and security made credit chips an enduring symbol of trust in an otherwise volatile galaxy.
Ingots. Credit ingots were elegant tokens of wealth, their small, flat, rectangular forms glinting in gold and silver hues. Measuring between 2 and 3 inches in length, the silver ingots extended slightly longer than their golden counterparts, lending each type a distinct presence. Intricately stamped symbols adorn their smooth surfaces, including the iconic emblem of the Galactic Credit Standard, a mark of trust and stability in a galaxy often devoid of either. These ingots carried a sense of permanence, their weight and craftsmanship embodying the Republic's promise of economic order.
Credit cube. Credit cubes offered an alternative to the familiar credit chips. About the size of a human hand, these compact cubes could contain anything from modest sums to vast fortunes, making them versatile. Like their flat counterparts, credit cubes were a secure and efficient medium for managing wealth.
Coins. Credits were also made into a hard currency in the form of metallic discs called cred coins, a primitive but secure form to hold and trade in the currency.
Credit chits. The credit chit, or cred chit, was a smaller, modified version of the standard credit chip, developed by the Commerce Enhancement Corporation during the latter years of the Old Republic. Between 50 BBY and 25 BBY, the chit was intended to represent smaller amounts of credits, making it worth significantly less than a regular credit chip. The corporation designed it as a more distinctive alternative to the increasingly common and plain credit chip, but it never gained widespread use. Credit chits are seldom seen in the core or inner rim worlds, where larger denominations were preferred. Instead, they occasionally were found in the outer rim, mostly used by the extremely poor, as they were valued at only 1/100th of the worth of a standard credit chip. The Empire.
As the Galactic Empire teetered on the edge of collapse, physical currency saw a resurgence. With uncertainty looming over the outcome of the Galactic Civil War, many feared digital credit systems might crumble, rendering credit chips and account balances worthless. Coins, ingots, and other tangible forms of money gained a renewed importance in these uncertain times. Yet even as trust in digital credits wavered, they retained a practical utility in controlled environments. On installations like the first Death Star, credits were accessed via debit codes, allowing swift transfers to and from account cards. These cards proved indispensable for gamblers engrossed in sabak or pazak, and for bounty hunters collecting their hard-earned pay after completing dangerous missions. The credit, in all its forms, remained a universal thread in the galaxy's intricate web of commerce and survival. During the Clone Wars, and even in the years leading up to the conflict, widespread unease rippled across the galaxy. Many feared the war's outcome and its potential to destabilize a fragile galactic economy. This anxiety was especially pronounced in regions beyond the core and inner rim, where distrust in the credit ran high. In response, countless planets began minting their own currencies to insulate themselves from the uncertainty. By 22 BBY, the intergalactic banking clan was churning out new currencies at an astonishing pace, nearly 20 per day. While the intergalactic currency exchange system struggled to keep this burgeoning economic chaos in check. Despite these localized efforts, the credit endured, evolving into the Imperial credit under Emperor Palpatine's reign. Few dared refuse it during the height of the Imperial power, and its widespread acceptance made it the de facto currency of the galaxy. Even the Alliance to Restore the Republic, though ideologically opposed to the Empire, relied heavily on Imperial credits alongside their own fledgling Alliance credit. The Imperial credit's ubiquity stemmed from its practicality, available in denominations ranging from the modest 0.1 to the substantial 5,000. Coins and chips bore images celebrating the Empire's dominance, like the 1,000 credit coin, which featured the grandeur of the Imperial Palace. Yet, while larger denomination coins existed, they were rarely seen beyond the wealthiest core worlds or government-controlled zones. The credit could be broken down into tenths, known as a decicred or a dime, and was often regarded as little more than pocket change in the grand scheme of galactic finance. Yet even this humble denomination bore the mark of the Empire's dominance. The decicred became a subtle tool of propaganda, its obverse emblazoned with the stern visage of Emperor Palpatine, a reminder of his ever-watchful presence. On its reverse, the unmistakable Imperial crest loomed, a symbol of order and control etched into the very fabric of daily life. The Alliance credit was the official currency of the Alliance to Restore the Republic, and a symbol of defiance against the Galactic Empire. Though the Empire vehemently declared the Alliance credit to be worthless, those sympathetic to the cause often accepted it regardless. The exchange rate typically stood at 25 Alliance credits for a single Imperial credit. Han Solo was rewarded with 20,000 Alliance credits for his daring rescue of Princess Leia. The galaxy's economic landscape shifted dramatically after the Empire fractured in the wake of the Battle of Endor. With the Imperial grip loosened, a patchwork of currencies emerged once again. The New Republic sought to restore the credit's prominence, but it was far from universally accepted. Regions such as the Imperial Remnant minted their own currencies, sowing further division. Exchange rates between currencies became volatile and unpredictable, eroding trust in galactic trade. In this fractured economy, traders, smugglers, and legitimate freighters turned to more stable mediums of exchange: precious metals, rare commodities, and barter systems, eschewing the credits of both the New Republic and the Imperial Remnant, neither of which trusted the other's currency. This era of economic disarray would test the resilience of galactic commerce like never before.
Other currencies. As mentioned, not all systems traded in galactic credits, and preferred their own or alternative mediums of exchange. Planets with a stronger independent streak, lack of central oversight by intergalactic government, gray and black markets, and worlds that lacked the technical infrastructure could all prefer local or other forms of currency. Of course, any world or even sub-state on a world and even private corporations were able to generate their own currencies. However, whether or not others were open to trading with or for those more limited currencies was also a consideration. On Hutt and Outer Rim currencies.
Drugats. Widely used on the desert planet of Tatooine during the waning years of the Galactic Republic, it was 50 Drugats that sealed the deal between Watto and Jedi Qui-Gon Jinn for a T-14 hyperdrive generator, essential to repair the Naboo starship carrying Queen Padme Amidala after it suffered critical damage. The Drugat, sometimes referred to as a Dugat, took the form of a metallic coin, their weight and design reflecting a rough practicality. For some, these coins were more than just currency. Corlo Brightwater, a former stormtrooper turned member of the renegade group known as the Hand of Judgment, carried a single Drugat as a lucky charm, a token of gratitude from a farmer he had once helped.
The Pegat, a gold-based currency of Huttese origin, was once a common form of payment in the Outer Rim territories, particularly on Hutt-controlled planets like Tatooine, during the final decades of the Galactic Republic. Its value fluctuated, but typically a single Pegat was worth around 40 standard credits. One Pegat was equivalent to 64 Wupuipi, or 4 Trugats, serving as a familiar unit of exchange in the region. In 32 BBY, the Pegat played a pivotal role in a high-stakes bet placed by the prod racer Bowles Roar, who wagered 5 million Pegats, roughly 200 million credits, that his colleague Ben Quadinaros would never dare compete in the Bunta Eve Classic. Though Quadinaros did indeed enter the race, his pod racer's power coupling exploded before he could even leave the starting grid. Nonetheless, he still met the conditions of the bet and walked away with the vast sum, becoming an unexpectedly wealthy Tong in the process. Even after the fall of the Republic and the rise of the Galactic Empire, Pegats continued to circulate on Tatooine. The currency remained in use well beyond the Battle of Endor and the Empire's defeat, still considered legal tender under the New Republic. In 8.5 ABY, Commander Quentin, who did not recognize the newly minted Republic credits, placed a bid for the painting Killik Twilight using Pegats, an enduring symbol of the Hutt's economic legacy.
Trugut. The Trugut was a Huttese currency used throughout the Outer Rim territories during the final years of the Galactic Republic. Its value fluctuated, typically hovering around 10 standard credits per Trugut. One Trugut was equivalent to 16 Wupipi, and 4 Trugats were equal to a single Pegat, establishing its place in the complex web of Huttese financial systems.
Wupipi. The Wupipi was a unit of Huttese currency used in the Outer Rim territories before the rise of the Galactic Empire. It was valued at approximately 0.625 galactic credits, with 16 Wupipi equaling 1 Trugat, and 4 Trugats making up a Pegat.
Erodium ingots. Erodium was a sparkling, colorless metal used as currency in lawless regions of the Outer Rim, and other areas where Republic credits weren't accepted, much like Nova crystals. It was often shaped into ingots or coins for trade. Darth Sidious incorporated Erodium into the construction of his lightsabers, while Imperial agents used Erodium idols as gifts to win the favor of the Hutt crime lord Suda Nemoro in Juguna. In 29 BBY, 10 large ingots of Erodium were valued at 3 billion credits, though these ingots were small enough to be concealed in a pouch. Rhodium had once served as a standard for galactic currency, backing the Republic Treasury Reserve until it was replaced by banks after 425 BBY. By the time of the Cold War, statues made of real rhodium were displayed inside Castle Organa, some towering in size.
Nova crystals. Nova crystals were prized for their rarity, beauty, and unique industrial uses across the galaxy. These bluish-white gemstones had a remarkable ability to amplify light, glowing with an inner luminescence and displaying a prismatic sparkle. Their crystalline matrix absorbed heat from sunlight, especially in the red spectrum, causing the crystals to glow brightly, often enough to serve as a light source of their own. Mining nova crystals was perilous, as they became highly unstable when removed from their rocky matrix. Exposed to temperatures above 30 degrees Celsius, raw crystals could spontaneously explode with devastating force. As a result, they had to be refrigerated during transport until safely stabilized in industrial settings. In the Outer Rim, nova crystals were used as currency and made into valuable jewelry. Their ability to amplify light made them vital in optoelectronics, particularly in photoreceptors and sensors, though raw crystals could also be repurposed as explosives. Nova crystals were instrumental in funding the first Death Star project, with significant deposits found on the planet Megiddo, known for its mineral wealth. Other planets, like Cotelier, also relied on nova crystals mining, though they faced constant pirate threats. The discovery of large nova crystal veins, such as on Cran, could have immense economic consequences, as seen when the Empire enslaved the native Cluzot to harvest the crystals.
Imperial credits. The Imperial credit served as the primary currency of the Sith Empire, circulating on worlds under its control and among its citizens and personnel. In 3950 BBY, it was the standard form of exchange across the Empire's vast territories before their downfall and replacement.
Beyond fiat currencies and direct trade, other forms of commerce were also practiced outside of the Republic in particular. The Sith, Hutt, Zygerian empires were known to trade in slaves and spice. And now, a word from our sponsors.
Are you or someone you know hampered by the trappings of the mundane? Then visit us at Single Station. Learn how to mind walk and see beyond shadows. Come with us and visit the Lake of Apparitions. Drink from the font of power. Stay with us beyond shadows at Single Station.
Single Station LLC is not liable for any hallucinatory or psychotic illnesses. Please consult with a licensed medical professional prior to your visit.
Welcome aboard the Millennial Falcon. This is Christian.
And this is Jordan.
We're currently visiting the Galactic Banking Clan headquarters on Munilinst, seeing if we can't pocket some credits or crystals lying around.
Some say it's essential for a functioning government. Others say it's a hive of scum and villainy, depending on your perspective.
From a certain point of view.
Yes.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, we also need credits ourselves. Isn't that right, Christian?
Yes, we're not bank robbers.
Absolutely.
Not yet.
We want to give a big thank you and shout out to all of our new supporting listeners, our new signups on Patreon. And one of them is Emma. Thank you very much, Emma. As well as we got a couple people who increased their pledge, which you can do.
Thank
but
you.
We didn't want to, if we hadn't given you a shout out before, here is one now. And if we had, here is a second one.
Get your money's worth.
Yeah. So Caden and Cat God, thank you very much, sirs. And ma'am, I believe, for Emma. But yeah, just thank you to everyone for supporting the show. We really, really appreciate it. We are trying to add as much value as we can to these supporting listeners. And if you want to become a supporting listener, for $3 a month, you can get access to our catalog of bonus episodes. You get all of those behind the paywall on patreon.com. You can also buy, if you don't want to sign up for recurring payments, you can also buy single episodes for $3. Yeah, and that just helps us keep this bucket of bolts flying. We also have the $5 Jedi Knight tier, which gets you access, not only you get access to the whole bonus catalog as well as ad-free listening. So we have ad-free listening on the Patreon, so you can get that, especially for all the new episodes. If you want to give single credits or donations, you can to PayPal, starlordspodcast@gmail.com, and you can send it to our PayPal. We're also selling merch on Redbubble, so if you want some fun little designs, we got them there. Also, guys, brand spanking new, we started using digital currencies.
Oh, inspired by this episode.
Yeah, we thought this was a perfect time to insert it because, it's this episode talking about the currencies of Star Wars, and we have added a Bitcoin wallet. So if you wanted to give a few satoshis our way, you can send them over on our Bitcoin wallet. The address will be in the description of the show on our link.
Or a whole Bitcoin. We won't turn that down either.
If you want to give us a whole Bitcoin, which is worth a lot these days.
Shh, don't tell them that.
Yeah. You are absolutely welcome. But yeah, we will take just even a single Satoshi, which is worth, I don't know, not a lot. But yeah, other than that, if you don't want to support the show monetarily, not a problem. Other ways you can help us spread the good news of Star Wars, the greatest podcast on the HoloNet, is you can rate and review the show, especially you filthy Apple users.
They're still not listening.
Get on there and start rating and reviewing the show.
Please, we're asking nicely.
Yeah. But seriously, much appreciated. We do have lots of rates and reviews, and we really appreciate it. Keep them coming. If you're a newer listener, please rate and review the show. That really helps us out. And share the show if you know of people or groups, online Discords that you think would enjoy this content. By all means, share it. Recommend us to some people. Also, follow us on social media. Get in touch. We want to do more fan engagement, audience engagement, like just more building of the community. That's like really important to us, that we have like a good, healthy community. So follow us on Instagram, X, or Facebook. We're on all of those, as well as Discord. You can hop in on the Discord server, and all the links for those are in the description. If you also just search Star Wars Podcast on Google, you should find most of our
contacts there.
Yeah, most of our social media stuff will come on the top results. So Star Wars Podcast, just look that up. If you want to email us, starlordspodcast@gmail.com. Send us your collections, your fan fiction, your headcanon, your in-universe ads, and any corrections or comments on any of the episodes. And hey, TJ gets another shout out here. My man. He's basically like our Don Draper, is that the guy?
From Mad Men.
From Mad Men.
He's got all the content.
He's our marketing specialist. Yeah. Bringing us all the big names in the Star Wars universe in the galaxy far, far away. But he provided the ad again for this episode. So thanks again to TJ. And if anyone has a script for an ad or a recording of an ad, by all means, send it in. Again, an in-universe ad, that would be kind of funny. If you are going to send a recording, try and have decent audio. if you want, you can always even just record yourself talking into a microphone, not just like your built-in microphone on your computer. That probably won't work for us, but if you have even a USB mic, you can record your ad in there, and then I can add music to it or whatever later, if you have your idea of what kind of music you want. And then I can do a little bit of editing too as well. So we love those. Keep them coming, guys. Christian.
Yes, sir.
Credits. Filthy
dirty
mammon.
All right. Well, first and foremost, before we dive into credits, this is not a financial podcast. We are not economists. We are not professional investors. Nothing we say should be considered financial advice. I got to get that disclaimer out of the way before we get.
I love those disclaimers on the finance pods I listen to. And then they proceed to give you
financial
tons
advice.
Of financial
all right,
advice.
dump all your assets into Galactic Credits, which is a new Bitcoin we're starting.
Yeah.
A new digital currency.
I'm starting Vader coin.
My Kenobi coins will beat your Vader coins.
Will they have the high ground?
Hopefully. All right. So first and foremost, a couple of things I wanted to address is just the language. Sometimes currency is hard in Star Wars for a galaxy that's so fleshed out in so many ways. The problem is with currency is that you have so many different authors taking their own version of what currency would look like in the universe. So this is how you end up with so many variants of the same credit, which does make sense in a galaxy as diverse as a Star Wars. So you have credits that take the form of, like, they're all considered the same monetary system, but they take different physical forms or non-physical forms as a digital currency as well. So just to get that kind of out of the way of, like, a credit could be those metal ingots, or it could be a cube, or it could be a card, or it could be just a bank statement.
It is interesting how they depict credits, and I think it's probably just when the whole concept of credits were written into the Star Wars universe, it was during a time where they almost couldn't have even conceived of like the internet, like
digital currencies.
And in a lot of ways, we obviously have like cryptocurrencies that have made a big splash here in the last 10 years, right, in our own society. But even before that, and even with our dollar or whatever currency that you use, it is like almost partially digital already. Like we transact almost like often entirely online and never actually touching a physical currency.
Use your credit card or debit card or
So in a sense, like our society is already moving in that direction where like currency is entirely digitized. But it's sort of interesting in the Star Wars universe. It is digitized, but it is on like a physical
hard disk.
A hard disk.
Cold storage.
It's like a cold storage hard disk. And it can be like that is where that credit is physically. It's not in like a central bank database. It's like if you destroy that hardware, then the credits are gone with it. Which is sort of like interesting. But I mean, there's also a whole bunch of interesting, like, I don't know, having that characteristic can also make people like more make sure that they protect their credits more so than if it was just like, oh, if I could just destroy this, but I know it still exists in the ether somewhere.
Yeah, like if my bank card gets destroyed, my bank account is unaffected.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
But in this case, if the credit, the physical manifestation of it gets destroyed, that money is gone.
Yeah.
That's on that credit. And it's interesting too, it's almost like it goes full circle where kind of like we evolved from like, bartering to a medium of exchange, some kind of currency, to like coins, to cash, like paper or whatever.
Yeah.
And then in Canada's case, plastic. And then into, like you're saying, this like debit transactional system. But then in Star Wars, it comes back around to physical again.
Yeah.
And you're kind of seeing that now with things like cold storage with cryptocurrencies as well.
Yeah.
And people who invest even in things like gold and silver, whenever an economy is like destabilized, be it by war or just bad economic policy or whatever, you often see people's assets move out of that digital space into something real. People want to hold on to something that they can actually control because of a fear of, a banking collapse or some calamity that will take your digital currency away. So it's kind of funny. And Star Wars being riddled with warfare all the time makes sense that their currency would evolve and then devolve like that back to like a, people want to see a hard version of
into like a commodity backed currency.
So just a quick note on language. Sometimes our regular real world vernacular will sneak into Star Wars scripts or books or things like that. So things like a dime, we have phrases like being able to stop on a dime, or dime a dozen, right? Which are very our world, and sometimes they sneak into like Star Wars things. So then they have to retroactively explain how that works. So that's where you come up with things like concepts like a decicred, like a tenth of a credit, and dime does come from the word deci.
Right.
Or deci,
okay.
right, in Latin. So there is a way to explain that away. So like they can call them dimes too, and it means a tenth, right? 10 cents is a dime. So it's just kind of funny whenever that happens. It pops up periodically or like Han references hell, for example. I think we mentioned that in an episode as well. About like what does hell mean conceptually to them isn't necessarily the same translation as what we would use. Originally, Lucas in 1977, he would describe a coin of the galactic realm as having two forms: a credit unit, which he didn't really describe, and then a flat square coin made out of crystal. And the crystal is not reproducible by anyone other than the Empire. Obviously, they kind of...
That's a very strange concept. I wonder where he was getting that from. In his own head.
It came to him in a dream.
Yeah.
But you can see elements of those original ideas kind of like get carried through things like the Nova crystals still maintain some value, right? And even Kyber crystals. And then like, the credit units, there's still metal coin discs that they can also use as credits as well, not just the digital.
And so a note on this, just like why I think this is kind of a silly idea and would never work in a galactic society. Like anytime, so one of the reasons even why gold itself, so full disclosure here, I've done for the last 10 years I've read about economics and monetary policy and stuff, and I find that stuff super fascinating.
It's all made up, Jordan.
No, but one of the reasons, there was a very practical reason why fiat came into existence, right? It initially came, so there was these warehouses that held gold. And people didn't obviously want to carry that gold around with them everywhere they went. So the warehouses, or the clearinghouses as they were called, they would issue notes that would basically say,
it affirms how much gold you own.
This person has X amount of gold, and you could trade those notes amongst each other
instead of having to carry a brick around.
Yeah, exactly. And it was especially for wealthy people and governments and stuff like that. They would use these clearinghouses in order to trade, and they eventually would started using these notes to trade with. And it actually, and there's quite a few examples in history where they started, there was these runs on these banks and more notes were issued than actual
gold.
Yeah, actual
right
gold.
Out of the gate, they were screwing people.
Oh yeah, right immediately. The shenanigans started because obviously how human beings are, anything that can be exploited will be exploited. They see this opportunity. I can double the amount of gold I actually have, and then. Yeah, so eventually when, then people started bringing these notes to the clearinghouses and they're like, we don't have enough gold to even redeem your note, so there would be issues. And sort of central banking is sort of interesting because it didn't really come into prominence until the U.S. Federal Reserve, and there were central banks, but it wasn't the same as how we think of a central bank today. But so in I want to say 07 or 09 or something like that, the Federal Reserve came into existence, and through all prior to that time, there was a bunch of bank runs from private banks because all the notes were from privately issued banks. So
no one could really hold them accountable.
Yeah. So there was all these banks that were just private banks, and they sort of they did business based on their reputation alone, right?
Yeah.
Like,
hey man, I just started a bank last week. You want to give me all your gold?
well, no, but some were better than others, and there was things like the Civil War and stuff that wrecked a lot of these banks.
Sure.
And so, it's sort of, there's like a really interesting history about like why we went to banknotes instead of like using a commodity, right? But you also have like transatlantic trade now, and you have things where it's like it becomes incredibly difficult to trade, tons of bars of gold across the transatlantic or the Silk Road or what have you.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Like if you have a UK bank account and let's say you move to the colonies or United States, trying to access or prove that you own a vast fortune in the UK. Okay, how do you prove that in the New World? And how do you, if you have to buy something, ship all that gold back and forth, right? Like it just becomes so cumbersome that it's useless.
Yeah, exactly. And then what you ended up getting to the point of like where credit became like credit ledgers became a thing, right?
Yeah.
Like where now people aren't just using a bill or something that's
claims
like a piece of paper. They're actually just using ledgers between banks.
Yeah.
And
so a bank in the States will contact your bank in the UK and confirm this person does indeed have $13 million.
Exactly.
Of
Yeah.
gold.
Or like they are lending them out this amount of money, so you can credit if they go to like a builder, right? Like the builder telegrams this bank and asks them it, and then the bank confirms that they will back whatever the client needs to spend. But anyways, that's sort of like how credit came into being, but it's about, so there's this term called the velocity of money in economics, right? And like the reason why we don't have barter economies, right, is because the velocity of trade in barter economies is so slow and so cumbersome. It's just like it really hampers your economy, right? And I once in a while I'll run into these, like anarcho-primitivist people who like think we should go back to a barter economy, and I just think that's ridiculous, because that is like, you are asking to be poor, basically, if we go back
your
to
whole civilization.
Like the having a medium of exchange that everyone
uses so much quicker.
It just, the speed and efficiency of it is so much faster. But having medium of exchanges is also tough because everyone has to trust it, right?
Yeah.
Like they have to.
We all have to agree that
we have to
mutually agree that this has value.
Precisely. So anyways, so you have like barter, then you go to, there's like glass beads were used as currency. Shells, salt was used as currencies back in the day. And then gold sort of like started taking dominance. And actually even back in the day when Europe really started using gold, West Africa was still using glass beads, and Europe wanted the gold from West Africa, so they would like flood their markets with glass beads because they didn't
devalue their currency.
They weren't using gold as a currency, and so eventually even those African countries went to gold, but like they got like
screwed.
They got hosed because they got super inflated, right? But anyways, there is like
economic warfare.
Yeah,
it's a thing.
It is a thing, absolutely. Anyways, it's there are just like very pragmatic reasons why society evolves from like a commodity backed currency to a a note system, like having notes, and then credit, and then now we have fiat. So fiat is we are the notes and the credit we have aren't really backed by anything. Some might say they're backed by militaries, which is probably the truest statement. But fiat is just like, it's a Latin term for means like decreed from on high or something like that. It's sort of like basically it's money by decree. So I say it exists, so it
therefore
exists.
It exists. The United States government says it exists, therefore.
Precisely.
Yes.
But fiat, again, there is a pragmatic reason for fiat, and not to get too bogged down in the weeds here, but I know I'm getting...
We're already waist deep. Let's keep going.
So there is really a reason for fiat. It does make the liquidity there's way more liquidity in the system, and you can get that velocity of money going much faster. And we all, especially after World War One, but really after World War Two, the global economy was just going crazy. Like the speed at which we could ship things was like really fast.
And then that also led to things like goods becoming more universally available and cheaper and
and so when you're having that many transactions, it's like to keep track of those transactions in gold is like really, really tough to do. It is like it is.
If everyone's making like a million little purchases,
exactly.
Right, how do you? Okay, you have the gold. Now that goes to this guy, and then this goes to that, and all happening at the same time.
And so there was like when Nixon took the U.S. off the gold standard, because so there's this thing called the Bretton Woods system at the end of World War II, and it was basically like all major commodities like copper, silver, gold, oil have to all be bought in US dollars. And kind of everyone agreed to that because all the countries except for America were absolutely wrecked economically after the war. and basically were at the mercy of the Americans, because the Americans actually came out really far ahead in the war, especially economically. So it was like the Bretton Woods agreement happened, and basically all the major countries agreed to trade in the US dollar. And at the time, for a little while, the US dollar was traded in it was backed by gold, right? And but eventually there's this funny little story about the French trying to redeem their gold from the US, and they even sent like a warship over to the New York harbor and to like try and collect their gold. And the Americans just said, no, we're not giving it to you. And then right after that, Nixon closed the gold window, and then basically ended the gold standard. And now it's just a purely credit system. And again, there's like, I mean, it was kind of unethical how they did that, because if you want to redeem your gold, you should be able to, because that's how the system should work. And if it doesn't, then how can you trust people? And if you can't trust people, you can't have an economic system.
The whole thing goes down the pipes.
But America was just but they had the most powerful military. They protected all the waterways.
Come and get it.
Basically, like, you can come and try and take it from us if you like, but good luck with that. So America went off the gold standard, and now we're like in a completely credit system. And again, I'm not advocating for this, but there is a benefit to it in that the velocity of transactions that you can make is like so much higher in a credit system. Like, you don't have to be making sure like the gold is balanced properly every day for 1 million transactions in your bank, right?
And further to that, what credit also allows is it allows debt too.
Yes.
Which is the other side of this coin, pun intended, which actually allows that much more velocity and liquidity in the market, because now you don't need $1 million on hand in order to start a development, for example. You can take a loan and use the debt system to try and cover those costs ahead of time.
And the economy goes even faster. It like really heats up.
The issue happens though when you become a debt-based economy, where there is more debt in the system than there is credit, and then who knows what happens.
Yeah, exactly. And we don't really know, because we've never had like a globalized credit debt system like this before, so we don't actually know
what happens next,
where this ends. We do know from history that no currency has survived forever. That's what we do know. We're just, I guess we're assuming that the US dollar.
We're hoping.
We don't know if the US dollar, and it is we're Canadian, but the US dollar
is the global currency.
Yeah,
it's the global reserve.
Like, we live in Alberta and we sell all of our oil in US dollars, right? Like, the US dollar is the name of the game. And bringing it back to Star Wars, the galactic credit, the Republic credit, the Imperial credit, what have you. This is just what you have to use. And there's going to be people on the periphery and on the edges, like using different currencies, rim, as we discussed.
Hut space.
But they still all have to use it, And all these other countries in the world, they all, just like in our society, they all use their own currencies, the Argentinian peso or the Bolivar, the Turkish lira or what have you, which are all just terrible currencies. But at the end of the day, all those countries, their central banks hold U.S. Treasury reserve assets on their balance sheets. And they have to because if they don't, one, they can't buy commodities that they need.
Because everyone else who's selling is selling in USDs.
And what they actually do is they essentially, in a way, kind of back their own currencies with the US dollar. And that's actually what gives the US dollar so much power, is because US treasuries are on in central bank balance sheets around the world. And they're all these countries are stuck between a rock and a hard place where they have to use the currency, even if they don't want to, even if the US weaponizes that currency, which it does against other countries. They kind of don't really have a choice, because if they pull out of it or if they sell all their US treasuries, they can effectively get completely cut out of the global economy. And that means your people starve to death, right? Like that is what that means. And there's just no two ways about it.
You don't get wheat, you don't get oil, you don't get nothing.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm curious, I'm curious. So going back to Lucas and why did he call it a credit? I always sort of assumed that it was like a credit-based system, that it wasn't backed by anything. But then he wants to do these crystal coin things.
So that was his original conception. And obviously it's kind of got out of hand, when it goes into the other authors who start writing more material, right? Like in the movies, there's not a lot of space to discuss economic policy, right? So credit it actually becomes a very default, a lot of sci-fi universes just use the vague notion of a credit as their currency, as just a throwaway futuristic sounding kind of payment system. And Lucas's credits were initially backed by crystals and other hard assets.
Again, but it was why call it a
credit? Yeah, it's kind of working backwards if you know the history of money, you were saying, right? But it was backed by a commodity, and then they go off that commodity. Obviously, again, things reflective of real world, right? They want to kind of mirror the Bretton Woods Agreement and going off the gold standards. And then this credit system, like you're saying, now exists as a credit system currently. That was a roundabout way of saying. Yes. It's good. I think more people should learn the history of money, and also things like central banking and fractional reserves banking, and
it's actually it has outsized impact and even influence on so many things. Of even our whole culture is influenced by the money that we use. And it's not just money itself. It's
whatever it is that we use to exchange goods and services.
Yeah, this mechanism, Marshall McLuhan has this saying that the medium is the message, and sort of that the medium that you use, the idea is that it forms your culture, it forms the way you even think, right? It forms your framework, your worldview. And people sort of dismiss that. They kind of have it backwards. They think that they inform the medium, but the medium actually changes how you view the world and interact with the world, right? So when we have this medium of exchange, like a credit system or gold, it really does change how you interact with the world, right? If you have really cheap debt that is easily accessible to most people, what you'll have a society that skews towards what in economics they call high time preference. So basically you want it now and quicker, rather than waiting and saving. And whereas if you have a gold back system, let's say, you are more incentivized to save because gold grows in value over time, right?
And you're literally acquiring physical gold, right? So you have one gold coin, I save that. I have 2 gold coins next week and 3 gold coins next week. You're saving something up, and then I want to make a big purchase.
But with a fiat system, our money is actually losing value over time. It's the opposite of gold, right? So you're actually incentivized
to get rid of it as
quickly as possible,
and exchange it for a good that can actually retain value, or a consumable that you'll use.
Yeah, exactly. And that is that actually has a huge impact on our society and how we interact with the world. And you think people complain about materialism and
fast fashion and waste. And,
like a lot
consumerism.
Consumerism, materialism. And a lot of that is like a result of like a fiat system where your purchasing power is losing all the time. So you are constantly under the pressure to get rid of that purchasing power, right?
Yeah.
Like, or to buy stuff with it. And then you know, and we have like available credit unlike we've ever had anywhere in history, right? Like for the average person.
Yeah.
And that is like often too tempting for most people. They can't handle that kind of opportunity, right? Like and they'll just sort of waste it. Whereas like wealthy people, they will take that cheap debt, but they'll invest in appreciating assets. They'll get rid of their depreciating asset, which is the currency, and they'll invest.
They'll trade up instead of trading down
into an appreciating asset, you know.
Yeah.
So,
and the crazy thing is we've done all this before too. Things like inflation, things, you know, especially I was shocked with the Roman Empire, how they inflated their currency.
Yes.
And actually reduced, and that was using gold and silver coins. And it actually would clip them and make them smaller, thus reducing like, you know, what the equivalent to our dime would be clipped down, and now it's worth less, obviously, because it got less gold or less silver in it. But they had more coins.
And actually, what they they ended up doing too was they started mixing in iron into the
lesser metals,
diluting the gold, so that they could make more of them. Right. So,
which I found incredibly shocking, that how ancient this practice of ruining your money,
especially for empires, but like very large states that end up having like huge wealth transfer programs and welfare programs like the later Roman Empire did, because they were trying to appease all of these all their societies that they had conquered, but they were always at threat of rebellion, right?
Revolt.
Like a revolt, and so they were just constantly giving out.
And flip side to that is you have to pay your military and your soldiers to keep with. So if you're maintaining a huge global empire, you need to pay your soldiers, otherwise,
or a galactic empire,
it all comes crashing down.
So it is
fascinating.
It is fascinating, but
back to Star Wars. The actual symbol, obviously is also, again, you see a lot of inspiration from real life. The people are typically familiar with the dollar symbol, you know, the S with the two lines through it, or the euro, same idea, or the pound. They're a letter or symbol, and then they have these demarcation lines through them. In Star Wars, the symbol for the credit is an Arubesh Resh symbol. It looks almost like a 7. And it's crossed by two lines in the upper left corner as well. So kind of following that same trend. Arodium is obviously intended to be the Star Wars universe equivalent of gold. It even has a AU, which is the atomic symbol, or the atomic letters
the
for
table
gold.
of elements.
So that's why they call it anything kind of aura, auric. It comes, and it's like Latin based for gold. And obviously that's the substitute. So like you can still trade in Arodium. Essentially, you're trading in gold. However, in Star Wars, gold also exists. So once again, and then that goes back to different authors working on the same thing, right? So now you have a new element they've created, Arodium. And then you have still gold that does exist as well.
So, and I do kind of wonder about this, like if you had a galaxy spanning civilization, would gold become kind of worthless? Because gold is everywhere in space.
In space.
Like we know we can find it on planets. We know we can find it on asteroids and stuff like that. So hypothetically, if gold is so plentiful, it will become worthless, right? Like it'll become just like quartz.
Just a pretty metal.
So
and there are other elements too, like platinum and stuff that are rarer, worth more than gold. So you'd have to look at like on the scale of the universe, what is the most common, what is the least common, and how rare is the rarest. And that would kind of change the values of things.
I'm just saying here too, like you could use that excuse as like if you're looking at the lore, like gold is probably very, very plentiful. Depending on what planet you're going, maybe in hot space it wasn't as plentiful. But I don't know. I feel like Tatooine must have large gold mines.
No, because they tried mining on Tatooine and it failed. That's the whole problem.
True.
They invested tons in trying to mine Tatooine and it turned out to be worthless.
I guess you're right.
But further to that though, the other elements too that would have value, things like our oil, things that create energy, things that have a lot of utilitarian purpose, whatever made up metal that they decide to create in Star Wars, Beskar, right?
Yeah.
Things that have utility often do become that medium. Like I said, in our current age, we've even moved away from gold more so to oil, right? Oil makes the world go round. And if we ever get past oil as an energy source, then whatever that new thing, if it's nuclear energy, then plutonium will be
or
very
helium-3
valuable.
or something like
right,
that.
or thorium, right?
Yeah.
So it really just depends on like what makes your engines work, what you build your ships out of, right? And whatever those things are will change the value of what it is that you're interested in, right?
Yeah.
Copper might be totally useless in Star Wars, right? Probably not for electrical purposes, but you know what I'm saying, right? Like if there's a metal that conducts way better than copper and is more plentiful or less plentiful.
That's also kind of interesting too, because copper has been used as a currency in the past. However, when it became like industrialized, they started finding way more copper. And because there was an incentive to look for it, right? It's like, oh, we can use copper in electronics, right? So all of a sudden we found way more copper than we ever thought there was, because people started actually looking, because it's like, and it actually devalued copper quite a bit. Like now copper, so
it does have value, but it's not as high as it was where you had.
Well, it more has utility than necessary. The thing about gold is like it's used. Its actual industrial use is pretty limited. Like the industrial use of it is used in electronics now, in like microchips especially, but it's still like the vast majority of gold is used.
It's very soft metal. It's very pliable. You can't use it for like drilling. You can't use it for building. You can't use it for weapons or armor. Yeah,
but it's also
it's very conductive and very stable.
And it's also like indestructible too.
Yeah,
like
it doesn't rust. It doesn't corrode.
Yeah, and it like we've been using it as a decorative metal, right, for millennia. So it actually kind of almost naturally fits better as a currency as opposed to something like copper or even silver, which has become a lot more.
Silver kind of sits in both worlds.
Yeah,
it's very interesting because it has a lot of value as like a currency, and like decorative purposes, but also it has a lot of utility.
Yeah,
it has disinfective qualities. It is conductive.
Yeah,
it is stable, kind of like gold. So yeah, silver is kind of interesting.
It is interesting. Yeah,
I'm a big gold and silver hawk. And digital currency.
Yeah.
All right. Last quick point. So I was just curious, what is a credit worth in our currencies and USDs? So I kind of went online to see kind of if people have done kind of comparative calculations and things. One user on Amino estimates it to be around $4. One credit is 4 USDs, while others on Reddit did it based on like the price of goods like blasters and land speeders and calculated to roughly be like one credit is equal to 2.1 USDs.
Oh, okay.
Obviously this is very constrained by time.
Yeah.
Like whenever these people did these calculations, because all these values are fluctuating both in Star Wars and in our world, right? The value of a USD changes dramatically day to day.
Yeah.
Depending on stability and depending on like, how many USDs are you going to pay for a land speeder? That could be different from 1 month to next year, right? Things like inflation and all other kinds of factors. So I think it'd be hard to make like a definitive value statement. However, the one guy who did do roughly the $4 did it based on the gold standard. Did it against gold because gold exists in both universes. You can see how much gold costs in credits and how much gold would cost in USD.
That kind of makes
the most sense.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're kind of trying to gauge like what would you pay for a blaster and what is that equivalent in American firearms today, right? Makes it a lot harder to determine price and value. Like I said, those things are very subjective.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all I got for that.
Cool. I think
money is interesting.
I think it's a super fascinating topic. I hope we didn't ramble too much here, but it was.
People need to hear it. Yeah. We will be coming back to the topic of like more taking a bigger picture at like the I was going to say global economic system, but the galactic economic system. So there's a lot more we didn't touch on, things like how banking works and taxation, economic models, like big picture kind of galactic economy stuff. So stay tuned for part 2.
Mm-hmm.
All right, before we close out, let's quickly jump to our mailbag. We had one listener submit a question. So this is from Chill Arc Trooper, and this is in regards to our episode a couple back, 98, Linguistics and Philology. The question was, why does Vader have an English accent, but Anakin has an American one? Is it the suit? Please explain.
It's a good question.
Yeah. So first, thanks for reaching out. Always love these questions. Definitely send more of them. And these are like good observations. I had never noticed a difference in their accents from one to the other personally. My ear never picked up on that being an issue. First of all, Darth Vader does not have a British accent or an English accent for that matter.
It's like regal though.
He speaks. So the actor who does Darth Vader's voice, obviously,
James Earl Jones.
Yeah, James Earl Jones. He's American.
Yeah.
The accent that he uses for Vader is the mid-Atlantic or transatlantic accent, which is...
It's like New England.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like high society.
Yeah.
A lot of it was developed for like stage and screen to enunciate well so that audiences could hear what you're actually saying and to... give like that sense. It comes off as like we have a weird thing, and speaking as Canadian colony, there's this idea of like a British accent being like high society or posh or whatever, right? And that kind of translates into this Atlantic accent, right, where they sound borderline like they have a British accent, but it's not in fact a British accent. And that's what
I know what you're saying.
James Earl Jones uses to speak with. In universe, they never really give an explanation for that. But so it's really up to us to speculate.
There's like Tarkin has an English accent.
Yeah, and Peter Cushing was actually British.
Yeah,
and a lot of imperial high society, and that goes back to like I forget what it's called, but there is an explanation for where it's high Corsanti accent.
Okay.
Which exactly has that.
So there's a wonder, like, was Vader maybe faking his voice just to blend in a little bit?
So that would be my speculation.
Yeah.
Either he would fake it, or even just being around them all the time, he adopted it to some degree.
Yeah.
Right. Obviously, it would be a perfect accent, but he would just pick it up.
But if he sounded like a kid from a backwater planet of Tatooine,
right,
like with that, he wouldn't be very well respected with the top military brass.
Yeah. If you showed up to like the UK speaking, maybe a very Southern American accent, they could tell very quickly where you were from, right? They know you're not from here, and where they might even, definitely that person's from Tennessee, right?
Yeah, like your Appalachian accent,
So certainly that would play a role in that.
And that's just speculation.
Yeah, and I was gonna say even the whole cultural thing too about like the British high society sound. Even within Britain, there are like lower classes who speak with a different, kind of Cockney accent, for example. Is amongst their society, they can tell what kind of groups you roll with based on accents. Yeah. So it's just kind of funny how the colonies kind of see that British accent just universally as like high society.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we got one. Sorry, you wanted to say.
Yeah, and then the other thing is it could very well just be like a function of his suit. Maybe Vader is forced to speak, like I said, from stage to speak more clearly and project his voice through whatever system uses to project his voice, which causes him to speak like that. So,
well, I do wonder if even just his vocal
scorched vocal cords,
his box thing, though, if it's just projecting a voice, like how like I can speak into a microphone,
and it can change your voice.
I can go to edit the way the voice sounds.
Yeah,
right?
I think the weird thing with that would be I don't know if it could change your accent. It might change like the tone.
Well, I think you could with like AI voiceover things.
I guess in Star Wars you could assume maybe there's something like technology like that exists.
Hypothetically,
yeah. But truth is we don't know. We can only speculate.
Absolutely. Okay, one more quick from the Factinator on he's in our Discord group, and he has a YouTube channel, so go check it out. Check out his YouTube channel. He talks a lot about Star Wars and other properties.
Sci-fi universes,
in any case, he says in regards to the Scum and Villainy episode 10, so way back when, I think you guys forgot to mention Queen Hadia from the Dawn of the Jedi comics, who was infamous during the Despot Wars. So we probably didn't mention her during that But I will say, well, first of all, we have covered the Dawn of the Jedi era, and we also did a review of the comics, but that is behind the paywall. So become a patron and go listen to it. Then you will then you'll hear us talk about Hadia. But I will say about the Scum and Villainy episode, we were talking a lot more about closer to Zero BBY stuff as opposed. I mean, because you could really go through any era of Star Wars and
You'll find
there's
criminal
Scum and Villainy.
elements,
Yeah. We can't cover it. Oh, we couldn't cover it all
in one episode.
In one episode, yeah.
So stay tuned for part 2.
Yeah. So perhaps we need to do like a part 2 of the other scums and villains in different eras of the galaxy.
There is no lacking.
Yeah. Exactly. But with that, I think that's it. Anything else, Christian?
No.
All right. See you later.